Good morning, guys. How are you doing today? It's Tuesday, and I decided to turn on the camera today for sort of one reason. I'm sure other stuff will come up, but a lot of this stuff may be leaving the house very, very soon. Now, in and amongst this little pile of cameras that may be taking off, of course, you have the Panasonic G7. This has been the primary tech channel camera for like a year and a half now. I bought it at the end of 2015. It's done a really great job for me. Still in absolutely amazing condition with all the original accessories and everything. I've got it all packed up. But I bought this camera with a microphone for about 600 bucks, again, at the end of 2015. And the camera itself, with the body and the lens and everything, you can sell it to Amazon for 500 bucks. And now that I've started using this Sony, the a6300, there's not a whole lot of reason to have the G7 around because it is a dated camera. I mean, that's part of the reason I bought the GX850, which, as you can kind of see, is already in its box as well. Unfortunately, the GX850, it doesn't have a microphone input, doesn't have built-in steady shot or stabilization or anything. So it's a ridiculously small camera that does take amazing quality photos and videos, but looking at some of the footage from the cruise, if you looked at the footage from when we went to Honduras to Rotan, a lot of the footage from that day specifically went back and forth between the GoPro Hero 5, the GX850 using the 20mm lens, the GX850 with the 42.5mm lens, and my phone. Because again, having a camera like that, it's super nice that it's that small, but the fact that it doesn't have any sort of stabilization built in means that hand holding it or walking around with it, it's just shaky all over the place. Even with the 42.5mm lens, it does have very nice stabilization. That only really compensates for a tiny amount. Oh, I forgot to even mention it. I paid about $550, I think, for the GX850. Unfortunately, it's only about $350 on Amazon in the return used, traded in type value, so I'm kind of up in the air about that one. We'll talk about that more in a minute. Then I've also got the LX100 in this pile. The LX100 I bought used, I think it was about 600 bucks last year, and it was a great camera. It does amazing quality photos and videos, does not have a flip-up screen, and I had to buy some additional accessories to be able to use it without needing a lens cap. So it's not a pocket camera, it's just a little bit larger than what I was looking for at the time, but I bought it because it was what was available. And unfortunately, I was very rough on it, so I may not be able to trade that one in. If I do, I would lose a lot of value. Like, I think it'd be about $250 in value, and I, again, paid about $600 for it with a bunch of accessories. So what's the reason for me selling off all these things? Do I need the money? No, I don't necessarily need the money at the moment. It just doesn't make sense for me to be hanging on to all these cameras. I have a really bad addiction. I mean, I just bought the a6300 for no real reason other than just I wanted it. But the good thing about it is, if I did sell off all of these cameras, one, I would have the kind of money left over that either I could buy a replacement body and still keep all of my Panasonic lenses, so I could get the G85 that has built-in stabilization. Am I gonna need that? Not really. Or I could buy some more lenses for the Sony system. I could technically potentially buy another Sony body. I don't know, it would just sort of open up more possibilities and also free up an awful lot of space on the shelf. I mean, the way that I'm using my tech channel setup, I'm still probably going to continue using the a6300 for a little bit, and I've got the Sony AX33 camcorder overhead, definitely getting the job done. And I'm going to be hanging on to the camcorder because I've learned a very valuable lesson last night. Duncan had an event at his school, a musical performance where he and all of his classmates were doing all these positivity songs, and I took the a6300 with the 55 to 210mm lens, and that was a huge mistake because I had it on this GorillaPod tripod instead of a full-fledged tripod. If I brought like a full-fledged 70-inch tripod, I could have stood it up there and gotten good video of everything. But because I was trying to handhold everything with this little tripod, all the footage just turned out really shaky. The photos actually turned out pretty impressive. I may be showing some of it here. And I was using the Ceramic microphone on the camera, and I think the audio even turned out halfway decent. But it did very much take me back to the point that if I'm going to be doing something like that, I really ought to just use a camcorder and deal with the fact that it's not going to be 100% perfect quality, but the stabilization and the ability to zoom easily without having to twist a lens, so much more worthwhile. So anyway, we're sort of back to the Panasonic cameras again. So what I'm really tempted to do is either to sell off all three of these cameras, which would equate to about $1,000, something like that, of Amazon credit, and pick up the G85 body, which would give me stabilization, and it would come with a 12 to 60mm lens, which is a pretty good all-around lens, and I've got the 20mm and the 42.5mm that I could swap out for portrait stuff. Or I could just sell off all of them. Sell off all the lenses, sell off everything that I've got that's Panasonic, and invest heavily in Sony. I kind of like the idea of having more of the Panasonic stuff around, just keeping something around. Put it this way, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know where I'm going. I just know that For one, most importantly, the G7, it's a very dated camera and I can still get out of it about the amount that I paid for it, because $600 that I paid for the G7 got me the camera as well as a $200 microphone. So if I can get $500 out of the camera, I'm essentially making money off of it. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. The GX850, I'm kind of, again, it's up in the air because it is such a small body. If I put it on a little tripod or a little stabilizer, it's gonna be amazing for walking around footage. And even then, the footage that I saw from the cruise, because it was all outdoors and there's so much ambient noise, I didn't notice any autofocusing noise to it, which I noticed during the initial video about it. So maybe that's what I'll do, is I'll just hold on to the GX850 and keep using it for any sort of walking around type footage that I want to do, that I want the DSLR mirrorless style footage out of. Even though the Sony does amazing quality footage, the GX850 does just as well, or almost as well, except that it doesn't have a mic jack. Or just hang on to it for portraits, for photography type stuff, because I've done some Instagram photos with it so far and it's amazing. And at that point, you sell off the G7 and potentially the LX100, you're talking about $750, maybe $800. That's definitely enough to buy at least one new lens for the A6300, maybe like the 35mm 1.8 or the 50 1.8 or even the Sigma 1.4, all kinds of options out there, because basically the lenses that I've got for this right now, 10 to 18, 16 to 50, and 55 to 210. I'm up in the air again about the 55 to 210 because of what you saw from last night. I'm up in the air. That's where we are. I'm up in the air about cameras. I'm always up in the air about cameras. I love the A6300, except that it doesn't have a flip out screen. I loved my Panasonic cameras as I was using them, but there was just some little something about each one. That's part of the reason I was thinking about the G85, because it's weather sealed, it's got better mic inputs, it's got inbuilt body image stabilization. I'm confused. I don't know. The good thing about going G7 to G85 is all of the batteries and accessories are compatible. They're all exactly the same battery, so I wouldn't have to rebuy anything. I've even got the little AC adapter dummy battery stuff for the G7 G85, so I wouldn't have to buy that either. I don't know. I guess let me know what you guys think. At least the G7 is gonna be going away in the next couple of days. The other stuff, I'm sort of up in the air and I'll keep thinking about it. But again, it is Tuesday. It's a little after 10 in the morning. I've got a bunch of work stuff that I need to get accomplished. Probably ought to start the day. So I took a few minutes and actually edited together the footage that I shot last night using the 55 to 210mm lens. Holy crap, that footage looks good. It's not ridiculously super uber duper gimbal stable, but at the same time I was filming at 210mm. And some of it I was actually doing, I don't think I showed any of the shots. I was just editing it and looking at it. Some of the shots and stuff I was doing, I did at 210, and then I did the clear zoom on the A6300 where it crops in without losing any detail. It crops in on the sensor, and it looked absolutely ridiculous. So while I had thought about returning this lens, it's not going back. For the difference of $200, which is what I could return it to Best Buy for, it's gonna be absolutely worth that for travel stuff, possibly even for portraits. If I can get far enough away from someone, 210 on this would completely blow the background out at 5.6. Super tempting. I'll have to try it out the next time I'm at like a baseball game or something with Duncan. That's a large part of the reason why I wanted it in the first place, was for baseball games. So what I'll do is the next time Duncan has one, I'll just put this on there and then I'll actually take a full-on tripod. So there's that. Anyway, made some pretty good progress while I was editing that video. I was also working on stuff for the day job and pushing out new code and stuff like that. Everything working beautifully, making some changes to the Jenkins server that I've been building for some of my coworkers. I gave some new people access to it last night and got some feedback on it, and basically they were trying to use it one certain way. I made some tiny little changes to their stuff and it immediately started working, so hopefully they're okay with the changes that I made. One way or the other, the most important thing to me is that it works and I don't have to go into huge amounts of excessive steps to make it work. And I did go through the process of filling out the return for Amazon for the G7, by the way. 500 bucks, yeah, absolutely, that camera is going bye-bye. So the question does come down to, will I go with the G85? Will I stick with the GX850? It's all going to depend upon my needs, so I'm going to think on it for a little bit. I noticed the price on the GX850 and trade-in went down. It was like $360 last night, it's $340 today. Unfortunately, the tracker I used to use, it was like Track Trade something, that site is no longer available. It's gone because Amazon killed off all their affiliate links because they were providing a history of pricing information, which is exactly what Camel does, but Camel is still up and running. Makes me a little bit sad because now there's really no way that I'm aware of that I could see what the trade-in value of something has been over time and get notifications and stuff about it. But there's nothing can be done about it now. I'll keep an eye out on it on the next few days, and if it goes up, like if it hits $400 or something, something, I'll trade it immediately. If it goes down, I'll just hold on to it probably. That's the great thing about doing this. I've got the A6300. It's an amazing camera. It's getting the job done for me, so I don't have to be in a gigantic hurry to buy something new. I can wait until NAB is over and see if Panasonic comes out with something new, or if Sony comes out with something else that's new other than the A9, which I'm not doing because 4500, no, I'm good. I'm still gonna have to decide about the other lenses because like the 42.5mm, it's great, but if I'm gonna be using the Sony a lot, I might as well swap that 42.5 for about the same price. I can get 35mm or 50mm for the Sony, and the trade-in value, I would only be losing like 30 or 40 bucks, so that's really tempting as well. Anyway, I'm going on and on about this. I probably ought to stop. And we skip ahead to the next day. Yeah, after that last clip, I turned the camera off, only turned it back on again to record a video. But it's now Wednesday. I've got the Panasonic G7 boxed up and ready to go. I spent most of the night just trying to figure out what to do camera-wise, and I think what I'm going to end up doing with the Sony is actually picking up either the 35mm 1.8 or the 50mm 1.8. They both have steady shot built in, and from what I've seen, steady shot with this camera, in terms of minor movements, does a really good job, even in video mode. So one of those two, probably the 35mm, just because it'll be a little more versatile, and possibly the 50 down the road at some point, or an 85, I don't know. And it does still leave me up in the air about the Panasonic stuff, but I'm completely open to your comments, your suggestions. I'm gonna keep thinking about it myself and make my decisions there, but I think I'm gonna just go ahead and wrap it up. I'm gonna take the box over to UPS, get it shipped off, get my 500 bucks from Amazon, and move on with life. So yeah, let me know what you guys think about my decision to start selling off my Panasonic gear in favor of Sony. Let me know what's going on with you guys as well. We'll talk to you again sometime soon.